Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. Welcome to another edition of Tuesday with Thom. Tuesday with Thom, of course, is brought to you by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl customizes solutions to issues of leadership, access and inclusion, economic development, and communication. Best Girl creates the solution that fits your needs. Okay, well, let's see. The past few days, there was the NFL draft. It was held this past weekend, and I hope your favorite player was picked by your favorite team. The NFL draft has become a showpiece for the league, and in particular for the young men who have worked hard all their short lives for that moment to hear their names called. So congratulations to all of them, and also congratulations to the free agents. Sometimes the difference between being a free agent and being a high draft choice is who's coaching you, how much you developed, what program you play in, and so on and so forth. So I wish them all the best and look forward to seeing them in the professional ranks. Speaking of young men in football, there's one former coach who feels that athletes should not have political opinions. Well, you probably already guessed who that is, but yes, it is the ex-football coach that keeps opening his mouth and have dumb things fall out of it. Former coach and now one of the senators from my home state of Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, says football players should keep out of politics. Essentially, he says they should just shut up and play football. Well, what about former coaches who don't know the three branches of government anyway? The former coach said this: everybody wants to make an opinion. I thought you had opinions. I didn't know you could make them. But everybody wants to make an opinion, and that's fine. Tuberville tells us, but I think especially for young people to get involved in something that maybe they might not understand as much, I think they need to let people that whatever they do for a living justify it. Huh? Okay, this is Tommy Tuberville, who played college football and then spent 40 years coaching football, now telling football players to keep politics out of sports and vice versa. You can't make this stuff up, you know. Though I do agree with the coach/senator's advice about not getting involved in something that you might not understand. Huh? Okay, the country is beginning to open up again with major events taking a chance on large crowds, such as last week's Kentucky Derby with over 50,000 fans in attendance. I'm a big fan of horse racing and go every chance I get. I've been to the Derby, and I was glad to see it back. Medina Spirit, a horse originally bought for only $1,000, took the early lead and held on for the victory. I've been a horse racing fan for many years, been to several tracks around the country, been to the Derby, and it is absolutely a wonderful thing. And I plan on visiting the Fairgrounds race course in New Orleans next month when we go on a family vacation. I hope you're safe with all the storms. There's supposed to be more storms this week. We're obviously having more storms than ever before. And I did see where President Biden went to visit former President Jimmy Carter. And that former President Jimmy Carter is now getting credit for his foresight on climate control and the fact that we could lower some of the pollution if in fact we did some of the things that he recommended. What was that, almost 50 years ago? I commend President Biden for going to see President Carter. I thought President Carter was and is a great man. And actually, I was doing the news when President Carter ran for office, and I got to cover him when he came to Birmingham, Alabama. Probably one of the highlights of my time as a news reporter. Okay, our roundtable guests are here, Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker. We look forward to our conversations with them. And our G-List guest is Gerald Ginwright, owner of Mainstream Financial Services. He's a retirement planning consultant. He assists individuals, families, and business owners in planning for financial success and has over 30 years of experience in the insurance services industry. Gerald is also president and founder of To Know Money. That sounds interesting. Our nonprofit financial education speakers bureaus, and we look forward to talking with Mr. Ginwright about financial security this morning. So Let's move to our regular roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Mychal Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards, a Mobile, Alabama native, currently living in Birmingham, Alabama. Barbara we've had some issues with Barbara's internet, but Barbara is a trooper, and she's made arrangements to be here with us, and we thank her so much. And Barbara, I just want to tell you, we thank you from TWT for what you've been doing in terms of helping us to reach more people. And I'll just say, when we did that show with Stefan Deming, you really outdid yourself, and there were several thousand more people we reached than we normally reach. So thank you very much. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Tom. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for those comments. It has been such a pleasure for me to be involved with Tuesdays with Tom. So it's my pleasure to help spread the word about the show.
Well, you know, Mychal, and I started a couple of years ago with a radio show, and we had some issues there, and it didn't quite work out. And so I told you guys we'd come back, and we'd come back stronger. And we have so far. This is our 35th show in this format, and 34th show, I think. I'll have to get Emily to correct me. I'm sure she will. 34th show, that's right. And I appreciate everything that you do. So what's going on with you, Barbara?
Well, thank you, Tom. Well, Tom, in this week's news, this Sunday is Mother's Day. For all of you gentlemen for our viewers, period, who still have their mothers with them, don't forget to remember your moms. And for those guys who are married, make sure you take care of your wives on Mother's Day, whether she has children or not. If she's a wife, she's probably mothering someone, maybe her spouse.
Make sure. About to say, probably mothering her husband, right?
Right. So please make sure you remember those special ladies in your life this week and take care of them on Sunday, but not just Sunday. They take care of the household throughout the year. So make sure you do something special for them throughout the year, but especially on Mother's Day. Don't have them in the kitchen cooking or worrying about what's the family's doing for dinner that day. Make sure it's a special weekend for them.
Well, we definitely will do that. Unfortunately for me, I will have to be out of town on Mother's Day on a job that spills over. But I will make sure that I do my duty and
thank you.
And certainly honor my wife, who mothers a lot of us. Let me just put it that way. Is your mother still with you, Barbara?
No, my mother passed in 2007, Tom. So, I miss her dearly. But, I do have elderly family members that I look to as my mother figures in my life. So I make sure I remember them on Mother's Day.
Yeah, we lost my mom in the year 2000. And then we lost my mother-in-law in 2009, 2010, who was my adult mom. So I understand, I get it, and I wish everybody's mom out there a happy Mother's Day. You got anything else, Barbara?
Well, in today's headline news, I thought it was really interesting. I think the state of New Jersey is trying to offer an incentive for people to get the COVID-19 vaccine. They're offering free beer. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah. I did.
Yeah. So, hopefully that'll be an incentive to some of the people out there in the state that maybe were thinking about getting the vaccine to go ahead and get in line and make sure they get their vaccine. And maybe some other. Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say maybe some other states will follow and offer, other incentives. I think someone, maybe even is maybe nationwide. I think Krispy Kreme is also offering a free donut if you can prove that you've had your vaccine. So, maybe just those little small things.
How about that?
Yeah, right. I thought that was interesting.
I saw it this morning. They talked about getting a free beer, but they showed the people having a alcohol a drink as opposed to a beer.
It wasn't beer.
So I'm sure that one probably wasn't free. Let's see if we can get Mychal Walker on here. Mychal Walker is president of the Walker Agency, a full-service insurance brokerage. Mychal, how are you this morning?
I am doing well, Tom. I hope you're doing well. And Barbara, good to see you. Hope you're doing well also.
Thank you. Yes, I am.
All right. So, Mychal, before I ask you what's happening in your world, you keep up with the sports world fairly closely. And I just want to ask you, what do you think about football players not being told not to speak out on politics?
Well, there are several thoughts that come to mind. First thought is football players are human beings. They are people. They live in this world just like all of us. And for that matter, all athletes do. So they should have an interest and a say in what's going on in politics, social justice, criminal justice, you name it, because it can all affect their lives as well. So I don't get people saying, shut up and dribble or shut up and play football. Secondly, for somebody like Tommy Tuberville to come out to say that, I think it would have been wise on his part if he had followed his own advice and not ran for Senate.
Okay. All right. What's happening?
I concur, Mychal. I concur.
Hey, I'm just saying it like it is. Come on.
I hear you. I hear you.
Tom, I want to share something with the audience first before I get to my normal commentary about healthcare. There is a committee called America's Forgotten Heroes Committee. It was founded in 1998. And what it is, first of all, I'm going to read what their tagline is. It says, slavery was a devastating assault on the African-American legacy in America, but it does not define the totality of the Black existence. It's time we learn the rest. What this is, it's a movement to get a petition signed, and they're trying to get several hundred people to sign this petition. I'll give you the website address, but there are artifacts and loads of information about the contributions that African Americans made to the United States, but it's sitting in the Library of Congress. This is an effort to get it into the public schools to be taught in public schools. And from what I understand, that if they can get enough people to sign this petition, they can take it to Congress and have it taught in schools so that everybody can learn about the contributions that African Americans made to the United States.
Well, we got to get past Mr. McConnell, but I hear you.
We got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree with you. I agree with you. He has issues with 1619 being a date of remembrance in the United States in comparison to the other dates that we commemorate. But you know, that's him. That's another senator.
Yeah,
that's another
that's
senator. That's another senator.
There are a few like that.
You know, the more I hear about these senators, I should have run for senator when I was asked some 20 years ago.
You should have.
It's not too late,
Done a much
Michael.
better job. Yeah. Well,
it's not too late.
You know, and maybe we should just dedicate a show to this, but at some point. But you know, the issue of money is major in running for office. The issue of telling the truth is major in running for office. I think that, you know, what party you belong to, where you live is major. And so it's very, very difficult, especially to be an independent. Doesn't mean you don't belong to a party, just means you have an independent thought, or you have a thought separate from the herd, such as this Liz Cheney lady that they're giving all kinds of hell because she said Trump did not win the election, and he didn't. But you know, he started saying they were going to take it away from him a year before it ever happened because he knew he was going to get his, you know what, kicked.
Right.
So anyway, Michael, you got something else? We can move on.
Sure. Let me share this with you. CVS and Aetna, as many of you may be aware that CVS purchased Aetna. Well, what they're trying to do is launch a new pilot program that will provide mental health care services to their insureds in their retail outlets. They launched a program in January in about 3 different cities: Houston, Texas, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Tampa, Florida, and a dozen stores in those locations. They hope to extend that to 34 this year. But it's people that can come in that are having mental health issues can come in and see a therapist. And the reason why they're doing that is during the pandemic, people needing to go and seek mental health care services has quadrupled. You may recall that former First Lady Michelle Obama said that she suffered from depression as a result of COVID. And I think some people made light of the fact that she came out and said that. What CBS and some of their research have found is that consumers pay anywhere from $150 to $250 out of pocket per session. And the cost is prohibitive to some people. So they're looking at trying to take the service to people in their neighborhoods. They want to focus on people that may be on Medicaid and figure out a way to get the costs down so that people can come in and talk about their issues. They've also found out that people that have diabetes, if they suffer from depression and what have you, it brings on other medical issues. So they're trying to get everybody, and as they used to say, get your mind right. You remember that saying we used to say, let me get my mind right or get myself together. So they want to make sure that everybody mentally is healthy, because once you are mentally healthy, you plan to take care of yourself in other aspects of your life. So we'll see if they're able to accomplish their goal. So they're also going to negotiate with other carriers so that they can accept people that are with Humana, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and allow them to come in.
Okay. Thank you for that information, Mychal. That's great. We appreciate it. You always bring us good information as to what's going on out there in the health insurance industry. We appreciate it. I'm just going to make a quick comment, and this is a little bit of an aside. This goes back to our initial conversation about football, but our coaches used to always tell us before the game, son, get your mind right. You know?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
And we would be in there, we'd be listening to the music. We had the music up loud, man. We'd be in there combing our hair and stuff. And he said, get your mind right, coach. He said, get your mind right, son. It's like, coach, my mind right. I'm ready. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to our sponsor, Best Girl, and hear the message for the day.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossom, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Hey, let's go to the G-List now. The G-List, where everybody is a star. Remember, Hollywood has the A-list, but here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G-List. And our G-List special guest today is Mr. Gerald Ginwright, founder and managing member of Mainstream Financial Group. As a retirement planning consultant, he assists individuals, families, and business owners in planning for financial success. He's got over 30 years experience in the industry. And founder of nonprofit financial education speakers bureau. So, Gerald, welcome this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thank you so much. It's very much a pleasure, and let me acknowledge the pleasure extending to being here with Ms. Edwards and Mr. Walker. And Thom, we go so far back, I feel like I'm at home.
Well, good. I was about to say we do go back, and
we do, don't we?
It's been a good ride. So take me back to the beginning. How did you get involved in dealing with the financial industry?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's really an interesting story. I had an uncle who was an entrepreneur. And one day as a kid, he told me a story about how he took a few dollars and built a taxi company. He was the owner of Harlem Taxi here in Birmingham. And he started out as a jitney with a borrowed car, running people back and forth to town from Smithfield. And he actually did quite well doing that. And he was one that knew money and was very generous in helping me to understand it. So it was something that I got very intrigued about. And that sort of led me to money and understanding it and teaching about money.
So talk to me about financial literacy and financial legacy.
Okay, well, let me step back and say my basic focus is retirement income planning. So that would suggest then that I work with individuals in helping them to retire, after, long careers. They've built their 401ks and now they're ready to retire at peace. Well, the point there is that you've got to have resources to create income. And early in my career, I felt that I just wasn't getting the push that I needed in terms of clients who had wealth, because I saw that financial literacy lacked a lot in our community. So I began to focus on financial literacy. And that's just simply understanding money and making sure that you are in a position to put money to work for you as you've worked for it. That has worked to the extent that it has allowed me to do a lot with my nonprofit, which is To Know Money. And by teaching it, starting in schools, churches, other groups, it has helped me to nurture clients to the point that some of them are quite wealthy now, and that I've been in the business for a while. So it's like planting seeds, and over time, those seeds have begun to reap pretty generous harvest. So that's the financial literacy part. Now, when we look at legacy, that is to say, well, if you do well over time and you are building wealth, hopefully you're going to have something left to pass on to the next generation, because that's where our community is missing it quite a bit. So when we look at legacy, we're talking about being able to pass that golden baton to the younger generations, as so many other communities are doing. So the two matters. When we look at the literacy part, we're getting those individuals in gear. Legacy is that we are helping those individuals build so that they're able to pass those dollars on. Now, that also ties to estate planning. So many times I initially speak with clients who don't have a will. They don't know what a trust is. They don't have the benefit of planning. And Thom, as you know, having played football on all levels, you know that if you run out on the field without a game plan, you probably aren't going to do very well with the competition. Well, so many consumers approach life and their finances the same way. They want to think that they can wing it. You just can't wing it. You don't outsmart these guys who have vice presidents and managers whose sole job is, how do we get more of the consumer's money? You are having to really realize that as a consumer, you've got to figure out how to keep those dollars. So the point here is having the literacy, having enough to pass on the legacy, overall gives you the benefit of a retirement at peace and being able to build a community one family at a time.
I'm glad you touched on consumerism, because a lot of times people equate how much money they make with financial literacy.
Yeah.
Which if in fact you're just spending it all, you're not necessarily you're not necessarily building that legacy. And I just want to touch on one thing you said about the legacy. Do you remember A.G. Gaston, who the black millionaire in Birmingham?
Sure.
And he had a
Absolutely.
saying: "A part of what you earn is yours to keep." He
Absolutely.
always said the first you get your first dollar, you save a dime. And
right.
And the man built an incredible legacy. So tell me this: you get a new client.
Okay.
What process do you follow with them?
Well, what happens is that as I'm getting a new client, I'm there. It's either by a phone call or a referral, and so at the time that they get to me, they pretty much decided that they're wanting to work with me. So the first process is selecting me. They've done their research. They know the services that I provide. The second is what we call a fact-finding process. And that's where we sit with the client to understand who they are, what it is that you are wanting to accomplish, and what your resources are to make that happen. Once we understand that, then we as a team, I've got a team of planners, tax attorneys, financial planners, account managers, and so forth. My team will put together a strategy to say, okay, we can get this client from point A to point B based on these steps. At that time, we go back to the client, and I'm dealing directly with the client. A lot of times they won't even see the team, but I'm dealing with the client. And I'm presenting those solutions to the client based on what it is that they've asked to accomplish. And if all things fit, we begin executing that based on the strategy. And then beyond that, we have an ongoing follow-up to make sure that that client stays on track to the point that they have asked us to assist. Oftentimes when we're looking at, say, the fact-finding part of the plan, I'll have a client to come in and say, well, I'm wanting to do, these things, and I'd like to have, this much income and so forth. And sometimes I'll have to go back and say, well, based on your resources, either you're going to have to really step it up over the next few years, or you'll need to sort of throttle back in order to hit that goal. What that does is give them a point of reality, rather than getting down the road thinking that they're on a certain track and they're not. We help them to realize the necessary steps to move them from point A to point B without wasting time, energy, and money. So we do a 5-step process, and that is how it works.
Okay. Let me ask you one more. What should you get your 401? You're out there now. What factors do you consider when you want to choose a financial advisor?
Well, I think you should interview the advisor and ask some basic questions. Ask the advisor, simple things such as, what do you like about your job? And that's a very simple question, but if you look at the reaction that advisor puts out when you ask that question, you could sort of get a feel. Did this guy or young lady enjoy, what they're doing? You ask about the services that they provide. You ask how they actually get paid. You ask about their investment philosophy. And you asked if something were to happen to them, what happens to your money? And then you also asked, who has my money? Are you holding my money, or is there a third party trustee holding the money? And one important thing is to ask if they are a fiduciary. And that simply means that that person, if they are a fiduciary, is legally required to have your best interest rather than theirs. Attorneys and certain financial planners are fiduciaries, all are not. I mean, all financial planners are not, attorneys are. So the thing here is that make sure that you are distinguishing whether or not this person has to have your best interest, or they can in fact have their best interest.
Okay. Let me go to Barbara and Mychal. I'm sure they got a couple of questions for you. Barbara, you're up.
I am. Good morning. Good morning,
Good
Gerald.
morning. Hello.
Thank you for being here with us today. I do
My
have a
pleasure.
question. Thank you.
Sure.
I knew I wanted to retire basically at 30. I decided I wanted to retire by 55. So I started planning for it. On the other hand, I had coworkers of mine who were saying the same things, but they were age 50, 52, still hadn't really made a plan of any kind. At what
Okay.
age do people start preparing for retirement? And what are some of the things they should start doing at that point?
Well, believe it or not, they should start day one of their career. Now, the thing isn't that they're going to have a lot of focus on it. You'll have an appropriate amount of focus to say, well, okay, I'm starting this career, I'm starting this job, and at some point down the road, I'm wanting to leave it, either this job or a job along the way. So day one, they're looking at what type of retirement benefits are available with this particular employer. If they are benefits, you want to take full advantage of those benefits. If not, then that means that you've got a gap and you've got to create those benefits yourself. So you want to see day one and imagine that time that you're leaving. And as you approach that time that you're leaving, the intensity of your focus will increase appropriately down the road. So you've got to start out with a plan and continue to revise that plan until you're ready to walk out the door.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure enough.
Let me go to Mychal and we'll circle back.
Okay.
Mychal.
Good morning, Gerald. Glad to
Good
have
morning.
you here.
My pleasure.
Let me ask you this. Are you securities licensed yourself? And if so, what security license do you have?
I've got a 65.
Okay.
I'm a financial advisor.
Okay. All right. Great.
That is why I indicated that I am a fiduciary.
Right. Yeah. I kind of thought that. That's why I asked that question. I was wondering that. Now, kind of on a different level, you notice, I'm sure you're aware of this, Bernie Madoff passed away, I think, a week ago, who had the largest Ponzi scheme ever in America.
Right. Right.
Do you know what license he had? Was he 65 or what? And then the second part of that is, based on things that he did and other people, how does that impact you and what you do?
Gerald, before you answer, Gerald, could
Yes.
you explain 65? Because I think a lot of people won't know what you guys are talking about.
Okay. In the world of investing, there are a series of licenses that are required in order to sell securities as well as give investment advice. Depending on what it is that you are looking to do, whether it's sell or give advice, there is an appropriate license. Some licenses are held by an individual, some licenses are held by firms. Now, my license is to advise. I don't sell. I am a financial advisor. So you want to also look at individuals who sell, such as investment brokers and so forth. So that is the difference between, without getting too deep in the woods, again, being a securities advisor. I'm going to have to speak broadly based on what I am allowed to say. So that's why I'm giving you a general answer.
Okay.
Now,
Good deal.
as far as Madoff, I don't know what license he had, but apparently it had to have been one where he could collect and manage funds. As far as how it affects my practice, I would say certainly during the time that this matter occurred, it was all over the news. It's like, well, who is this guy? What did he do? How did he do it? Well, as you noticed before, when I mentioned the questions that you need to ask an advisor, what services do you provide? What is the holding point of my money? Is there a third party trustee? So I think what happened, especially with that situation, was that his clients were just over comfortable with him, and the way that he approached matters, I imagine, was to give them a comfort level to the extent that they didn't question certain things. But I think that if you're dealing with educated advisors, going back to financial literacy, you'll know the questions to ask. And if you understand what it is that you're doing, which is critical, I often tell my clients, although I'm going to mention certain things and make certain recommendations, understand what it is I'm telling you and why I'm telling you and how that's connected to something that you've told me. So to answer your question, again, without getting too deep in the woods, that's my offer.
Okay. Barbara, you got a follow up?
I do. Well, I have another question. Gerald, we hear a lot about the Secure Act in the news today. Can you explain what the Secure Act is and how does that impact us today?
Yeah, well, the Secure Act is the act that back in 2019, when I guess we were, just coming into the point of realizing that we were about to go into a pandemic, Congress passed the Secure Act, and that stands for Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act. It deals a lot with retirement plans. It changed quite a few things relative to retirement. One thing that might come to mind immediately, it used to be that you would hear that you had to take your money out of your retirement plan at 70 and a half. That was something that would always ring a bell. Well, that has changed. It's 72 now. So that simply means that if you've got an IRA or a retirement plan and you haven't taken money out at 72, you must start because you haven't paid taxes on those dollars, and the IRS is saying, okay, now we want taxes paid. Even if you're taking some out, there's a minimum amount that has to come out, and that's called a minimum required distribution, and it is calculated based on an IRS table. One other thing that you may have heard is something referred to as a stretch IRA. What that deals with is when an IRA owner passes away and leaves that IRA to an heir, whether it is a spouse or a non-spouse, there were certain rules that would allow that individual to stretch that distribution out over time. Now I'm gonna go back and connect to what I said about the 72 age. Now that means that at the point that that person who actually owns it and who is still alive, they would actually have to start taking money out at 72. But if that person were to die, the person that inherits it, that minimum required distribution starts then. It starts at their age. So what would happen is that you would, let's say you got a 30-year-old who's inherited an IRA, that minimum required distribution has started, and they're having to take that out over that table of time for the rest of their life. Now, what the Secure Act did, it actually took that away in a major sense, because now it is within 10 years that has to be empty. The account has to be empty. And when you look at it, now let's say you've got a 30-year-old and you've got X amount of dollars in, and that 30-year-old can let those dollars stay for decades. That means that account could grow enormously over time. So that simply means when that act changed that to 10 years, that really is shrinking that opportunity tremendously, because that no longer exists. So things like that would be what the Secure Act deals with, that and a whole lot more, but primarily retirement matters.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Great answer, Gerald. Mychal, you got anything else?
Sure. Gerald, in your practice, do you include, or tell me how big of a role, Social Security, Medicare, annuities, and long-term care play in your recommendation?
Well, I tell you what, all of the areas that you mentioned are vital in putting a plan together. Because you mentioned Social Security. Well, Social Security is, part of that retirement income picture. The point that we want to make as we're working with clients over time is, don't let Social Security be the only thing that you are relying on when you get to retirement. We also want to make sure that the individuals are taking Social Security at the right time. Now, when I say the right time, we have some clients that'll come in and it's hard to talk them out of taking it at 72, because they say, well, it's my money and I'm going to take it, but they don't, in many instances, they don't really need it. So what they're doing is taking money they don't need. They're paying taxes on money unnecessarily. Now, a few are like that. Others will listen. So to defer those dollars oftentimes are a better strategy. And as far as Medicare is concerned, we have an area that specializes specifically in that, in helping clients make those selections. I don't sell that product. However, the product, we help clients in making that decision. So what we do, when you go back to the answer that I gave relative to that approach with a new client, when we're sitting there talking to them and doing that fact finder, we're looking for the areas that we're able to help them, and what areas are going to be important for them to have that peaceful retirement. And those areas that you mentioned all play a part in making that work. So that is how we blend that into our planning.
Yeah. Gerald, if I may, we're both in the same business. That's why I'm asking these questions. And
That's why you're asking the tough questions, huh?
Well, I do the same thing. So I just wanted to say that when you were addressing me, you said 72, and I know you were talking, that was in your mind, but you meant 62, because a lot of people try and take Social Security at 62.
Yeah, did I say 72? Yeah, I mean 62. Yeah, thanks for the correction.
Yeah, and some people may not know there are like 3 levels. There's a 62, then there's 65, and then full retirement age, which is normally
correct.
67 or later. So I just wanted to say that for our audience and what.
Thanks for catching that.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Gerald,
Yes,
let
sir.
me ask you one last. So what do you think about the new tax plan from the president?
Well, I tell you, as we all hear and read these days, it's all over the news. One thing that I will clearly say is at this point, it is just a proposal. There is no telling how it will end up. It's going to have probably a rocky road uh, before anything is really passed. But when you look at it, it is basically looked at as a tax on the rich, on the wealthy. Certain things are going to happen relative to tax rates. There are going to be some benefits for the individual. For instance, some child care credits are going to be available. Capital gain taxes will be adjusted. So, and also, it is claimed that anyone making less than $400,000 will not actually feel the brunt of the increases. So a lot of moving parts there, and I think the point is just stay tuned, and we'll see how everything comes out the wash.
Okay. Gerald, you got any closing comments you'd like to make to our audience? General advice?
Yeah, I would like to say that for everyone listening, the point that I hope that you get is that planning is critical. Oftentimes, I see people who think that they can do things in their head. There are only a few people on earth that can do that. So take a pencil and paper, even if you're doing it by yourself, to figure out what it is that you've got, what it is that you are needing to accomplish. But ideally, get with someone that plans and understands. As I mentioned before, it's awfully difficult to deal with companies and entities that are built to separate the consumer from their money. It's important to realize that you've got to have a game plan. Don't try to wing it, because in retirement, you rarely will get a do-over. The point of financial literacy, promote that. Take time to go to my website, which is toknowmoney.org. There is a full course there of items that are very important, everything from the consumer life cycle to tracking in expense and budgeting, using a checking account, renting a home, purchasing a home, just all sorts of things. And bring these things in front of our younger generation so that they will be equipped and grow into financial freedom, understanding what it is and how to maximize their resources. So that's my offer to the audience today.
Okay, so let me, to know money, you may want to, that's the number
it's the number 2,
go ahead.
and then KNOWMONEY.org.
I have a question in the chat from Yvonne Smith. Wants to know, do you advise children, can children start Roth accounts?
Well, a Roth account, let me back up and say this. She's probably referring to an IRA. An IRA comes in 2 flavors. One is traditional, the other is Roth. Both require earned income. So the point here is, yes, however, some manner of design is necessary for that child to have earned income. Going back to the 2 flavors, A traditional IRA is the IRA that we generally hear about, where you're deducting that from your income in the current year, whereas with the Roth, you're paying taxes on it, but down the road, when you take those dollars out, they're coming out tax-free.
Okay. So, Gerald, you got anything else before we move on?
Well, let me just mention my podcast. I'd love the opportunity to mention that. I do a weekly podcast, which is Retire at Peace. You can pick it up on Spotify or Apple Podcast or any of the platforms for podcast. It's a 10 to 12 minute breakdown of matters every week. It renews every Saturday. One of the shows that I did recently was the Biden tax plan. So if you want to know more about that, I gave you quite a bit of detail in that podcast. And the one that's playing now for this week is about traveling while you are retired, which is encouraging you to know that even if you're retired, you still can afford to travel if you budget properly. So, Retire at Peace podcast. Please tune in.
Let me finish with this.
Okay.
You sort of, I think you and I are around the same age group, and you sort of dated yourself and told everybody how old we are when you said get a pencil and paper. They don't get pencils and papers anymore. You and I may still get the pencil and paper. Anyway, yeah. Gerald, that was absolutely wonderful. We appreciate you being with. And I know, see, we got a couple of young people on here, Emily and Sean, so they're probably giggling right now because they don't get the pencil and paper.
I'm still trying to catch up with that, you know.
We all are.
I guess I should have learned to type, because boy, the hunt and pack just won't keep up, you know.
I did learn to type. That's when I took typing in high school. I'm glad I did. I took Spanish in college and I didn't do very well, and I should have learned that as well. Let me give a closing commentary. I want to just give a parting opinion on the previous trial of Derek Chauvin and the murder of George Floyd. And it spawned the Black Lives Matter movement across America. First of all, to me, people celebrated. I just thought it was awfully sad to watch that man take that man's life. But it didn't give me any great pleasure because George Floyd was still dead at the end of the day. When you think about it, all the man had to do was take his knee off of that man's neck, and we wouldn't have had any of that. And I'll be honest, with all that evidence, the video, the witnesses, there was still some hesitancy in the back of my mind because of our history that he would be found not guilty. Only 7 police officers have been convicted of murder since 2005. In a 2019 study found that Black men have about a 1 in 1,000 chance of being killed by police. So, and since the Chauvin trial, 13-year-old Adam Toledo was shot in the chest by a police officer since he raising his hands. In Maryland, police shot and killed 16-year-old Peyton Hand, who was holding a toy gun. And just outside of Minneapolis, there was the killing of 20-year-old Dante Wright. So let's hope that citizens with cameras, police body cameras, DAs, conscientious jurors, and police officers will continue to do their job in these cases and situations. And more importantly, conscientious police officers will use less force when warranted. I also believe, and I strongly believe this, that police officers should live in the communities they are hired to serve and protect. Now, that's a discussion for another day, but I think I heard where in the Minnesota case, none of the police officers actually lived in that town, which gives you a different perspective on the people that you are supposed to be protecting and serving. So that is our show for today. I want to thank the audience for being with us. We appreciate you. I want to thank Mychal and Barbara. I certainly want to thank Gerald Ginwright. And our upcoming guest is Kenneth Kelly, who is the CEO of First Independence Bank in Michigan. It's an African-American bank. He was named chairman and CEO in February of 2017. Kenneth is a good friend, and I look forward to having him on the show. I want to thank all the audience for your comments. Nick Davis, I don't understand horrible document. Versailles, glad that you joined us, man. And we would like to thank all of you for being with us. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl. If you're interested in having your business be a sponsor of the show, get in touch with us. Thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, our producer, Sean Jones. And remember, enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe, and peace.